still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
That's how Sue is. You know, Jerry and I talk a lot. Jerry called me the other night, 2 nights ago. And I want you to understand, you know, Jerry's in prison, been there for well over a year, no due process, and he calls me up and to wish me a happy birthday. This guy's crazy. I mean, he's calling me to wish me a happy birthday from prison. That's the kind of guy that Jerry is. One of the things that we're going to do today is we're going to pledge the flag, but I do want to honor our veterans here today, and I would like to take a few extra minutes to do it. They deserve it. So could I have, as I call your branch of service, you come up here in front of the stage and face out. Could I have all Army veterans come up right now? Could I now have all Navy veterans line up in front of them? You guys are getting slower. How about Air Force veterans? Come on, John. Coast Guard. Do we have any Coast Guard veterans out there? Any? There's not too many of you, but anybody? Raise your hand. Come in. No? All right, folks. Last but not least, United States Marines. All you devil dogs, where are you? All right. I got permission to do what I'm about to do from Mac Kittredge. And many of you know Mac. If you don't know Mac, you're about to know him. And Mac is the consummate guy that we call to pledge our flag. He's an Air Force veteran, so he's standing up here right now with everybody else. Yes, several months ago in the fall, I see a Facebook post, as did many of us. And I don't know, I thought it was from Senator Sam Cataldo. I don't know if Sam, I think, is here. I don't know if he put it out, but somebody did. But Mac was at a GOP booth, I think in Rochester. Yeah, and Matt had a heart attack and died. I know, you're looking at him, this is strange, but it went out that Mac had died. All of us were devastated, completely devastated, and it was horrible to hear this news. And then 4 or 5 days later, I get another post that says, Mac's alive. Mac's not dead. So I saw Mac. Well, I talked to him recently, and I saw him, and I said, Mac, you know, what happened? He says, well, Jack, I died 3 times. They had to bring me back 3 times. And Mac being Mac, I said, well, what do you attribute this to? He says, they don't even want me in hell. So to pledge the flag today, Mac Kittredge, ladies and gentlemen. The flags will be in the center, right in the center. Just group in.
And salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And still home of the brave. Yay, Jerry. I'd like to say one more thing. Up there on the top of the flagpole is a black flag for missing in action. We have a man missing in action right here in the United States staying at the Obama Hilton, and I think it's time to bring him home, don't you?
Yes. Thanks, buddy. Hang on. We have a great lineup of speakers today. And first speaker to kick this off, good friend of mine. She's a prior gubernatorial candidate. Thanks, veterans, by the way. Big round of applause for our veterans. The reason for your liberty. Karen is a prior gubernatorial candidate. She's also a prior U.S. senatorial candidate. And she's been active in this state for years. She's a Blue Star mom. She knows what it's about to sacrifice on behalf of this country. Please welcome my good friend, Karen Tesserman.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for coming out on such a great day for such a great man. Before I get started, if you haven't got one of these blue cards, they're out here. Ask someone for one. Write Jerry a letter of encouragement. Diane has them over under the tent over there, so be sure you get one before you leave. I am only one, but still, I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can still do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. You know, last weekend, I was witness to the hope of America. 53 high school scholars from across this land explained some segment of the United States Constitution while they emphasized the duties and obligations of Americans. It was truly inspiring as each of these young people spoke about we the people, about my responsibilities, about your responsibilities to keep this great vision of America alive. We the people, they said, must do more than just read and understand this document. We must be willing to do our part. We must perform the role of a citizen. We must watch and hold those in our government accountable. Remember, these were high school students, but as they spoke time and time and time again, I was reminded of Jerry DeLemus. They were describing Jerry, and just like the founding fathers that they quoted, Jerry has put his life, his fortunes, and his sacred honor on the line. I first encountered this Marine veteran, Jerry DeLemus, and his wife, Susan, on the political campaign. This couple boldly and unabashedly shared their love of God, the gospel, and America. At their monthly Rochester 912 meetings, we learned and discussed the issues confronting our communities, our states, and our nation. The man I know is one who will lend a helping hand. So ready and willing was he to help his fellow man that Jerry drove an hour plus to our home to help remove ice from our Victorian home. At lunch, Jerry, who does not speak softly, emphasized time and time again our need to share God and his son Jesus. We would not be, nor should we be, ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, he said. So, following lunch and feeling secure, he returned to the final section of ice. And suddenly, a huge piece of ice sent Jerry to the brick porch. Lying in the snow, he reassured us time and time again that he was at peace, but we needed to pray for the persecuted Christians in the Middle East. That was his message throughout his recovery. Then one morning, Jerry called and asked for prayer. He was on his way to Nevada. He and others from New Hampshire had assessed the situation, and they were going to stand with the Bundy family for their constitutional rights against the government. His hope and his strength was in God. We rejoiced when they returned safely home several days later. Ever ready to offer aid, in the midst of our kitchen remodel, he again, true to form, assessed the situation, and Jerry was still in communication with the FBI, and so he picked up and left, went out to Oregon to lend a help and try to negotiate a peaceful settlement with the government. But the government wasn't interested, and so Jerry came home. There are those of you who might be questioning why the organizers would couple this event with a public figure. Well, that's because Jerry was an early and extremely vocal supporter of Donald J. Trump, the candidate. Today, Jerry is persecuted for following the example of Jesus Christ and lending a helping hand to his fellow man. He's persecuted for his belief in the Constitution of the United States of America. He's persecuted for his participation in the political process. Today, Jerry is in prison, denied the very rights stated in the Constitution that he, as a veteran Marine and as a citizen, fights to uphold and defend against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Jerry believes in Jesus Christ and the Great Commission, and he shares him wherever he is. And just like the Apostle Paul, Jerry DeLemus stands in prison in Nevada as an example for each and every one of us. As Paul's letters from prison exude encouragement to others, Jerry's letters from prison tell of the opportunities that he facilitates amongst the guards and the inmates to hear and share the gospel. Jerry knows deep in his heart that this journey is part of his mission. Today we must stand. We must be bold. We must embrace the example that Jerry sets. It's time to set this political hostage free. We must persistently bang on the doors of President Trump to carry out his promise to right the wrong of government against her people. We must persistently bang on the doors of the president and his administration to free Jerry DeLemus and the Bundys. We too must be willing to put our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor on the line. Will you commit? Remember, we are only one, but you are one. You can't do everything, but you can do something. The something that I ought to do, you and I can do. And by the grace of God, we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Wonderful words. Next speaker, many of you know him. He is presently the Bradford County Commissioner, among other things, as he says. Another good friend of mine, and he's so, absolutely one of the most consistent people when it comes to these events. He is always there. Please welcome Omer Ahern.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just want to give you a quick quote from my friend, founding father, Samuel Adams. It does not require a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen to set brush fires of freedom in the minds of the people. You folks are that minority. I'm sure there are 100 people that you represent by your being here today. And so I see a much greater than what's here. This was not part of my original remarks. I promised Jack that I'm going to keep my remarks under an hour and a half today. So I promise you, Jack, they will be under an hour and a half.
Thank you.
Susan, where'd you go? Susan, good to see you again. Thank you. Good afternoon. I am honored to be able to speak today on behalf of my good friend, Jerry DeLemus. In my mind, Jerry is a true freedom-loving patriot. Jerry is a principled leader. Jerry is a true peacemaker, as described in our Lord's Sermon on the Mount. Jerry is a Christian who renders unto God that which is God's, and renders unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. And Jerry is faithful to his oath as a United States Marine. Jerry, as an American citizen, and in reliance on his oath, believes in our United States Constitution and that our government would not deprive him of his constitutional rights, as spelled out in the first 10 amendments of our Constitution, the Bill of Rights. But it is apparent to me, however, that Jerry relied on and trusted our government to follow the Constitution to his detriment. My friends, as you all well know, we are a nation of laws, not of men. Founded in the principles and beliefs of the Judeo-Christian tradition. Our country was founded upon a belief in God and a trust in our Creator. And the good, merciful, and just hand of God, in my opinion, can be seen protecting our nation and her people throughout our American history, even today. God bless our President Donald Trump. Thank you, Lord. So as I prepared for today's remarks, and Karen stole a few of my thunder, and in listening to the words of my good friend and fellow patriot Jack at other gatherings, describing more fully what our friend Jerry is unjustly enduring, I could not help but see a great similarity to the treatment endured by the great apostle St. Paul at the hands of the Roman Empire, as set out in the New Testament Acts of the Apostles and the various letters St. Paul wrote and that are contained in the New Testament. Because, again, in my opinion, I do see the hand of God in all of what Jerry did and what he is enduring today. Jerry DeLemus, I believe, is doing the Lord's work. Not only has Jerry set an example for all of us to be a peacemaker in going out to Nevada and Oregon, but in his, what I believe to be his unjust incarceration, Jerry is doing the Lord's work by his Bible ministry and bringing the liberating Word of God to not only his fellow inmates, but also to a number of the corrections officers as well. Surely Jerry is a servant of the Lord, doing the work of the Lord, and throughout all of this, I can see that Jerry trusts in the Lord. He has to be able to get through all of this that he's been enduring for this last year and then some. Folks, as we know, trust is a mighty virtue, and trust comes in mighty handily when we are asked to trust in God's way of doing things. To trust in God's way of doing things. And so we ask, why is Jerry and why is Susan having to go through all of this? God's ways are not at all easily understood by we mere human beings. So we must believe and trust in the Lord in all things. I see Jerry's Bible ministry as a further example to all of us and as an outward manifestation of Jerry's trust in the Lord. And I'm going to quote here from Paul's letter to Philemon. Jerry, as a man who more abundantly is bold to speak the word of God without fear. So, to my good friend Jerry, far away, and you, Susan, here with us this afternoon, my prayers are with you both every day, that you will continue to trust in the Lord, that his will be done, and you will persevere to a fair and just ending to this horrendous situation. In the meantime, I pray also, may God continue to give Jerry the strength and endurance to suffer his unjust imprisonment, and to give strength and patience to Susan until Jerry comes safely home to her. Thank you, and may God bless the great state of New Hampshire. May God bless our great United States of America. God bless America. Thank you, folks.
I need someone to hold it. All right. Couple things real quick. I just have, and Diane, I'm going to have somebody, could I have two people come up? I just need you to hold these address signs, and you can take cell phone photos of them. It's to Attorney General Jeff Sessions. We're going to let all you have his address, because we're going to ask you to do something in a little while here. But I need a couple people to grab these signs and just locate yourselves out there so folks can photograph the information with their cell phones. Before I bring the next speaker up, I'm going to have Gary Hopper say a few words. Gary Harper, you guys know him, co-host of, what was it, Rocks, Paper, and Hand Grenades? I'm on there half the time. No, I'm not half the time, but some of the time, right? Right, okay. Yeah, he's offered to help us out with this, and he's going to tell you what you're going to need to do.
Hey, thank you, Jack.
Yay, Gary!
That's right, buddy! You know, in the year 2000, there was a seat open in Ware, New Hampshire. I was working full-time as a tool and die maker. I asked, nobody wanted to run for that seat except a liberal Democrat who was running as an independent. Anti-Second Amendment. There's one thing that is always keeps ringing through my ears, and it's the words of Edmund Burke, who said, "For evil to succeed, all is necessary is good men do nothing." Jerry is my hero because he does something.
Yes.
I've been in the legislature for a long time. In my first year, I lost all my overtime for the first 6 months, vacation time. It was quite a burden, but it was nothing compared to what some of these soldiers and veterans have done. Nothing compared to what a lot of people have done, and it's an honor to do it. Today, like Jack said, I am also the host of State Rep, and I'm the host of co-host of Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. On my Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades Facebook site, I have this letter addressed to Jeff Sessions. You can copy it, paste it, and send it. It has the address on it. Also, to make it even more easierist, I have these letters right over next to the water booth, right next to the water, that are addressed, stamped, and all you have to do is write down I got pens over there, all you have to do is write down your return address, inside, outside, and sign it. Okay, you don't have to read it. Make believe it's just one of those software agreements. But you can read it if you want. Anyway, you can do that. You can take one of them signed. I mean, they're already addressed and they have a stamp on them. You can take it home and rewrite it the way you want to say it. But it's addressed to Jeff Sessions. Thanks to Donald Trump, we now have a Christian Attorney General. And we need to unite. We need to send him a message to look into this. As a born-again Christian, he'll do what's right, but we need to remind him he's got a lot on his plate. There's a lot of crap in this country, and a lot that he has to do that Obama did. So please come over to the table, grab an envelope, sign it. I'll mail it for you if you're not going to get around to it, or you can take it with you. But we got to get this message out to Jeff Sessions. Thank you very much, Jack. Hey, Sue, I love you!
And over, Di, Don Luthrop, raise your hand over there. Di's over there. She said, we got some water. You guys are thirsty, go ahead over and get some water. Also, if you want to donate, if you have some spare change, cash, whatever, if you want to write a check, you can write it out to Jerry DeLemus or Sue DeLemus and give it to Diane. She's got a little container over there for contributions. It's not a fundraiser, but any little bit can help. Jerry and Sue will appreciate it. They didn't ask me to do this. I'm just doing it. Next speaker. Most of you know the next speaker is at the forefront of constitutional carry in the state of New Hampshire and all things Second Amendment and Constitution. This is a guy we really need to keep in the House. The Honorable John Burt.
Thank you for coming.
I'd like to start off with, I have a question for everybody. Were you here at the earlier event, which was the Sierra Club? All right. Well, we have one of our friends from Granite State Progress sitting over there taking pictures. How are you doing? And I even mentioned him in our speech, so I think he'll enjoy this. There were 242 detainees at Guantanamo when Obama came into office in 2009. He pledged to close Guantanamo Bay. When President Trump was sworn in, only 41 of those terrorists at Guantanamo Bay remained. Just 41. That's it. Over 121 of them that were released, we have confirmed that they have re-engaged in terrorist activities against us. Yet we lock up innocent people like Jerry DeLemus. Remember when the Tea Parties were started? I remember a lot of your faces out there. The left cried and they screamed that we were terrorists. Not one window was broken. No trash was left behind. Yet the police in Manchester were on the parking lots, roofs, taking pictures of us. Today we have Black Lives, the Sierra Club, Granite State Progress, and of course our favorite, Bloomberg. And many other, as I say, real domestic terrorist groups among us. They want to take America down as the America that started and as we know what America is. And what does the media do? They do nothing. Then we are the fake news media when we report the truth. What's really funny too is, remember when Trump had that rally and all of a sudden everybody turned around and said CNN sucks? I thought that was I played that video probably 30 times. It was hilarious. I felt sorry for the CNN guys because they were just up there like, oh crap, these guys hate us. But this is what the media has done to themselves. You know, they won't report the truth. And then there's Facebook that's saying if you see fake news to report it. Well, so anything I'm going to report is going to be considered fake news from my friends on the left. They're going to call it right up Facebook and say, oh my God, John Burke's hurting my feelings. It's got to be fake news. I wanted to talk a little bit about the terrorist judges that we have. Could you imagine what the left and the media would have done if conservative judges did to Obama what the liberal judges are doing to Trump, President Trump today? They would have cried and cried and cried and cried. It would have, I don't know what they would have had a meltdown. But why are they allowed to do this? You know, President Trump has constitutional rights, and the liberal judges are stopping them every inch of the way. Now, who else out there loves the president's travel ban? That's what I thought. And we are not saying no to immigration. We're not saying that. What we are saying is send us law-abiding, vetted, hard-working citizens that want to come to America and maintain what we have. But what do? The first thing we do is we give them welfare. We don't show them where the jobs are. We say, oh, you know, it's going to be pretty hard to get a job, so come over here. You don't even have to learn our language. That's wrong. My wife asked why I wrote French Canadians down, because she's French Canadian. When the French Canadians came here in the early 1900s, guess what they did? They went to Manchester and they worked in the mills. You want to talk about hard work. They say those mills are pretty hard. But they made a living and they raised their families. They didn't go to the welfare office. They didn't take any government handout. They went to work and they learned English and they said, we want to be Americans. We want to keep this country the way it is. Now I have a solution for these sanctuary cities. It's real easy. I figured it out one night. I was sitting on Facebook and I said, hey, we could do this. If President Trump sees this, I ask him to follow my advice. U.S. District Judge Derek Watson of Hawaii is one of those radical judges that are blocking Trump's travel ban. So I say bring those refugees right over here, unvetted. The vetted ones that want to work hard, hey, move them right next to my house. I welcome them as Americans. But the ones that aren't vetted, the ones that want to kill me, my neighbors, and my dog, and everybody else, and they're coming. Send them to Hawaii. Problem solved. It works. Just like Portsmouth and Dover. We'll send them over there. Let's ruin their school system. Let's crush their tax base. Because that's what this does. And what's really funny is immigration laws, they were voted on by both sides. Democrats and Republicans voted for this, to have laws that President Trump wants to follow. And that these radical, as far as I'm concerned, terrorist judges are blocking. On a brighter note, who likes constitutional carry? Yeah. I moved from Vermont when Vermont left me in the 90s. Or I moved to New Hampshire. Let me start that over. I moved to New Hampshire when Vermont left me in the 90s because Vermont did leave me. That's where I was born and raised. Vermont went so far to the left, I said, ooh, I got to get some freedom here. So I moved over here. What I was shocked, I was carrying for 9 months, and a friend of mine said, hey, you must have a license. I said, what in the hell's a license? So he told me. I said, who does that? Well, New Hampshire. I said, are you serious? I just went to New York City and I was carrying. I didn't know you couldn't do that. I led a pretty sheltered life, must have been, because I didn't realize a constitutional right could be taken away from me. So I called my friend at the police station. I asked him about it, and he said, oh, yeah, you got to have a license in New Hampshire. And I said, oh, all right. And he said, why? Oh, nothing. Have a nice day. And that was it. So I went and got a license. But one of my top priorities was to pass constitutional carry. And we did it. Now, I want to just say one real quick thing, and it really has nothing to do with this, but it's just hilarious. Plastic bags. This is hilarious. I got an email. Please support any legislation to ban plastic bags. Well, what happened, and I didn't hear back from the lady. Imagine she's a nice lady. I sent her an email saying, you know what bothered me about plastic bags? Is your grandparents are the ones that invented them. Your tree-hugging grandparents are the ones that forced us to use them in the 80s, that put a whole industry of renewable paper products out of business. So I said, why would I support anything that you want when you're just going to harm more people? And surprisingly, I didn't hear back from her. Because I just figure, the tree-hugging children of today, they're saying, oh, Grampy, you really killed a lot of birds and animals and everything else with your plastic bags and all this other tree hugger stuff. You thought that was good in the 80s. It isn't good. Well, so why would we believe what's good today that they want? So anyways, let's get back on. I just wanted to tell you that because it's just hilarious when I get these emails. Now, and she wasn't from my town because I would have been more respectful. Now, sadly, Like I said, we did pass constitutional carry. I can travel Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire with my constitutional rights intact. But sadly, we have somebody that has lost his constitutional rights, and that's Jerry DeLemus. We have to do whatever we can to get him out of that prison. He needs due process. He needs to have bail available to him, because I know among all of us, regardless of the amount, we would get him bail. And it just saddens me every day that I think about it, that Susan DeLemus is alone, waiting for her husband to return. I could only imagine what our forefathers' wives thought as they went to war for our freedoms. Those wives all sat there raising the children or taking care of their elderly parents or whatever it was, praying every day that their husbands returned. And many of them didn't. But I know Jerry DeLemus will return. And we have to keep that fight up. So I just say, God bless you. God bless Susan. And thank you, everybody, for being here. We have to bring Jerry home. Thank you.
Well, our next speaker, in my view, is another friend of mine, and I decided to put the two tall guys, right. I got a guy taller than Mike after he gets up here that's going to speak. But Mike Rogers, ladies and gentlemen, is a good friend of mine. Mike, sometimes you see doing live streaming for Granite Rock. He works with Skip Murphy. He's part of that. I don't know if I can say it. Can I say he's a member of the 603 Alliance? Sure. He's an avid member there. Great patriot. And this is a man who understands what our Constitution, what liberty and freedom are all about. And again, my friend, Mike Rogers.
Hey, Mike! Hey!
Good afternoon, folks. I too feel honored and privileged to have known Jerry. I'd like to speak a little bit about government overreach and some of the things that the Trump administration is doing already to try and reverse that. But like all the rest of you, I'd pray for Jerry's return and would do anything it took to help him get out of there. So government overreach in the first 100 days of Trump. It has never been more clear than during the past 8 years that a government big enough to give you anything you want is a government big enough to take away everything you have. That's attributed to many people, but it was actually a quote from Gerald Ford, not the first person that would come to mind. What are they doing? Well, they tried to take your backyard by declaring it wetlands. They were taking the land of the sovereign states under the guise of national parks and national monuments, closed vast areas to protect endangered species that some of us wouldn't necessarily call endangered, taking the livelihoods and even the lives of ranchers, taking your arms if they can, and then your liberty, and taking your money because they believe it belongs to them and not you. It should be no surprise then that even without financial benefit to connected politicians, and some of these cases do have that the federal government should be involved in the closing of vast tracts of prime forest to protect a subspecies of owl, shutting down essential California farmland by diverting precious waters to the ocean in order to benefit an insignificant minnow. Now, I'm not talking about Rachel Minnow here. I'm talking about the Delta smelt, which sounds like it ought to be a pizza ingredient, for goodness sake. They've declared existing mining areas non-compliant with newly invented rules in order to close down energy jobs. Barack Obama said he'd bankrupt the coal companies, and he sure tried. They threatened to seize property and homes on the Texas bank of the Red River with Oklahoma, causing then Attorney General Greg Abbott, and now Governor, to declare to the feds, in effect, molon labe, I dare you to try and take it. And they sued the feds. They speciously declared a variety of turtle endangered in order to close down ranch land in Nevada, which many families had worked and improved over the decades. culminating in the Bundy standoff, and all that to benefit cronies of Harry Reid. This is where Jerry comes in. Jerry stepped in. He saw an ugly situation developing, not only the disenfranchising of citizens, the Bundys, by their overreaching government, but also the risk for a very ugly confrontation. And he went out there as a peacemaker. Skip and I were privileged to interview him while he was on site, and there's simply no finer man for a difficult situation. They also charged ranchers in Oregon with arson and domestic terrorism for performing controlled burns to manage fire risk, a job that the Interior Department and the Bureau of Land Management should be performing, but they didn't. And with the apparent aim to free up land for Russian miners, Uranium One, that Hillary sold some of our claims to, or some of our uranium resources to. This is your government, folks. Or to borrow a word from the president, big government is bigly corrupt. And absolute government power corrupts absolutely. Stolen that bit from Lord Acton. Which brings me to Trump and the first 100 days. Jack said this was about Trump too, so I put it in a piece. Trump has learned that legislation is hard, and of course he knows that executive orders are only good until a change of regime. He's also learned that the swamp has many vicious species lurking within who will fight him tooth and claw. Nonetheless, there's been plenty of progress, regardless of what you may read in the press. Picking key cabinet secretaries fundamentally opposed to the way their departments have functioned, such as Sessions, who believes in the rule of law and actually enforces it. Scott Pruitt, who tried to sue the EPA out of existence and now gets to undo its wickedness rule by rule. Rick Perry, who wanted to close the Energy Department and now gets to recast and shrink its role in person. Tom Price, who arguably had the best Obamacare repeal legislation crafted, now gets to take advantage of what was put into the Obamacare law. The Secretary may and the Secretary shall. Well, they can undo regulations as well as write them, and he's going to do it. He's doing it. Betsy DeVos, who believes in local control of education and in charter schools. Rex Tillerson, causing meltdowns only this week by declaring that he's going to slash State Department staff and reduce their functions, reduce the number of functions, returning to its core role. What a concept. And the little guy that you probably don't hear of, Ajit Pai, who is now the FCC chairman, who was always opposed to government overreach and picking winners and losers. He is undoing net neutrality and is also getting the FCC out of that business of picking winners and losers. Trump has issued executive orders freeing up energy exploration and infrastructure. Issued executive orders under existing law to limit immigration. An obvious case for the dissolution of the Ninth Circuit. And by the way, this can be done. Congress giveth and Congress taketh away. It is written in the Constitution that Congress has the right and the duty to create federal circuit courts and to alter them. It's perfectly reasonable for Congress to dissolve the Ninth Circuit and break it into 3 parts, which would be more responsive to the areas that it serves. And they could get rid of all the current crop of judges at the same time and start over. They can't just throw the judges out, but they can remake the courts. That is within their remit. He freed up ICE and the military to actually do their jobs. Said, go win, guys. And what do we see? We see deportation. We see military strikes. We see action. And he's done much more. But the big story, again, you don't see much of it in the conventional press, is the Obama-era regulations, many of which were issued in his last few months once he realized that Hillary might actually lose. which have been neutered by legislation under the Congressional Review Act. This is another example of the hard work and genius of Newt Gingrich, by the way. He created this in 1996, I believe. It allows Congress to review and reverse egregious regulations issued by government agencies. And further, within the law, it explicitly prohibits regulations of similar intent but different wording from being issued in their stead. In other words, you can't sneak by on the back door. If we slap you down, it's slapped down. And Congress has been busy, and Trump's pen has been busy. He's having a good time. And I say, you don't see this. But Congress has been quietly slashing and burning. Regulations governing the coal mining industry, about $600 million worth of burden. Regulations defining streams in the coal industry. Broad, vague, and usurping state regulatory power, which already regulated the coal industry quite well. Regulations restricting firearms for disabled citizens, designed to trap them when they applied for Social Security. A rule governing government contracting process that increased delays and reduced competition. Of course, it's cronyism. A rule covering public lands, which was a power grab of land management policy from the states. Reporting requirements for college teachers, regulations on state education programs. All of these things designed to micromanage what goes on in the colleges, in the states, and to put them under the thumb of the federal government. Drug testing requirements. You think that sounds like a good thing? It restricted the state's ability to set their own rules for drug testing, for welfare, and for certain professions. Hunting regulations for the wildlife preserves in Alaska. They have a problem with certain predators. Alaska manages its wildlife very well, but the federal government thought it knew better. That's kind of like the Bureau of Land Management thinking it knows better than the states, and then you get wildfires because they didn't manage. Internet privacy rule. That was another piece. There was a lot of fuss about that a couple of weeks ago because everybody thought, oh my God, they're killing our privacy. No, they were taking away the special carve-outs for the likes of Google, which didn't really give us any more privacy, but just changed who controlled the privacy laws on the internet. The government's getting out of that business. A rule for logging of workplace injuries. The OSHA stepped in, it's hard to say this sympathetically, and overruled the Labor Department, which already had perfectly good regulations in place, and made things more complicated and more difficult. A rule preventing states from withholding funds from Planned Parenthood. Isn't it our money? If our state government decides not to fund Planned Parenthood in New Hampshire, isn't that our choice? But no, the federal government wanted to prevent us from having that choice. That's gone too. And finally, a rule on retirement savings. I haven't read the entire verbose mess, but essentially allows state governments to set up more risky investments that you can't get out of. And that companies can choose to put your retirement funds into these government-run investments. And you're worse off than you would have been protected under prior laws such as HIPAA. So yes, governing is hard, and the president is learning how to get Congress, especially his own side, on board with Obamacare repeal and tax reform. Let us wish the president Godspeed. He has a monumental task. But he's done more than you might think. Godspeed, Donald Trump, and come on home, Jerry DeLemus.
All right, next speaker is actually taller than Michael, right? I think. Well, many of you have gotten to know this man over the years. He's been at many, many of our events, and we all consider him a dear friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Garrett Lear, the Patriot Pastor. We will have no other king but King Jesus. And the reason why? He's the only king that could be trusted. The only ruler that could be trusted. No one else could be trusted with that kind of power. In my hand, I have an exact replica of the Bible of the Revolution from Robert Atkin. This one is an exact replica. They were distributed to the Continental soldiers to put in their breast pocket. Now, it's probably thick enough to stop a musket ball. But it wasn't just to stop a musket ball. It was expected that those Continental soldiers would read it, believe it, and live it out. So I read you just short scripture today. From the 2 Corinthians 3:17. Now the Lord is that Spirit. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. But we all with open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord. Let me read verse 17 again. If I can accomplish nothing else here on this ground that I've stood on for the last 26 years, in every season there is. Now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. We talk a lot about liberty. And let me briefly say, I don't think there's anything that I can add to what has already been said about Jerry DeLemus. I've known him a long time. We've worked together. But I can say this, he's my friend and I love him. And Sue is my friend and I love her. You've heard a lot of other wonderful speeches with much content concerning political candidates and a variety of other things. That's not my purpose for being here. My concern, being that I'm a descendant of one of the oldest families in America, that got on a little boat called the Mayflower and came over to escape tyranny, to escape rulers that thought that they were kings who could do anything they want, divine right kings they called themselves. And then, of course, I am also a descendant of those people who fought in the American Revolution, or what we call the War for American Independence is really better. And they fought on the right side, which is the side of the colonies, to establish independence and liberty. If these statues could talk, those that are standing here, particularly my friend over there, they have him as Colonel Stark. He later became General Stark, and his son, great American heroes, great American patriots, then and even now. They would probably say to you, as I am saying to you today, how in the world did we get into this mess? We've had lots of politics, we've had lots of governors, we've had lots of senators, congressmen, and everything. How do we get in this mess? How did we get into a situation when the law itself has become the outlaw? The law has become the outlaw. How did that happen? Now, do you think that I'm disappointed about that? You can be absolutely sure I'm disappointed in that. Why shouldn't I be disappointed in that? And many of you the same way, after all the years of service, both of ourselves and our fathers and our grandfathers and others, of course we'd be disappointed. But what I do want to encourage you in this, you might be discouraged, and I'm discouraged, but I should say disappointed is better. I'm disappointed, but I'm really not discouraged. Why? because I know who the author of true liberty is. And my encouragement to you as individuals, stop always looking for someone else to do the job and be the solution. You be the solution. You be the solution. When I look at, and it was mentioned, about the different branches of government and so forth, of how we've had an imperial judiciary, almost seeming like we get down to one branch of government, but that one branch of government that never seems to get mentioned or get taught about, that we find in the preamble to our Constitution, 3 simple words: we the people. So in military terminology, I'm pretty good at that. Do your job. You got one, do it. I don't care how old you are, how young you are, do it. The rule of law. And my big concern, and you think deeply about this today, if in fact liberty dies in this country, and if you study the history of our country, there is no country ever in the history of the world that has had so much liberty, so much freedom, so you shouldn't be surprised at the spiritual war to try to close us down as a bastion of liberty to the whole world. But if liberty dies, and our founding fathers said this, if liberty dies, my concern is, will we ever see liberty anywhere else on the face of this planet ever again? And you all know me well enough, those of you that know me. I have no desire to be politically correct, so I'm going to pray right now in the name of Jesus Christ. Anybody want to sue me for that?
Not here.
Certainly not here, and by the way, don't waste your time because I don't have any money anyway. God our Father, maker of heaven and earth, you are the one that we trust. And we thank you, God Almighty, for the country we live in, and particularly the wonderful Granite State. Being a native myself, love this ground, oh yes. And in this state capital, a place that has actually had the legislature in the same place longer than any legislative building in the entire country, we have a lot to be thankful for, and people like John Stark, true American heroes then and heroes today, help us to be like them and do our job without complaining. And we will thank you as always in the name of Christ our Savior. Amen. My turn. Let me tell you, folks, this has been a long journey for me. Certainly far harder for Jerry. But Jerry's my good friend, and to see what's happened to him is gut-wrenching. I'm here today to tell you the Jerry DeLemus story. You know, a lot of people think they know what really happened, and a lot of you out there probably don't know Jerry very well, and you're maybe a little confused as to what has happened with Jerry. I talked to a reporter earlier today. She didn't know. So I'm going to bring us back to the day that Jerry, through social media, found that Cliven Bundy and his family were being terrorized by the BLM. Jerry went through and checked the details and found that what was happening there was egregious. And what was happening there was this. There were some 51 ranchers in Nevada, cattle ranchers. They're living, feeding this country. That land, the grazing land that the BLM took control of in the mid-40s, turns out became far more valuable than most of the ranchers probably even knew, because I don't think they understood what was happening to them. But what happened was the orders came down from high that the federal government wanted ownership of that land. And in the past few decades, they wound up taking all, pretty much, of those ranches by manipulating grazing rights, by manipulating where the cows could actually receive water, by moving the desert tortoise around and saying, well, now you can't graze your cattle there. They're endangered species, so they may trample on the desert. I mean, the desert tortoise have been there forever, and the cattle have pretty much been there forever. They always get along. Can't imagine a cow not figuring out that it's a tortoise. But they use any and all excuses to eliminate these ranchers. Cliven Bundy was the last man standing, pretty much. And they tried so hard to get him off his land so they could buy the property for pennies on the dollar and take it over. Cliven Bundy owned that land, not him, but his family, from the 1850s, multi-generational. And he wasn't about to give it up. And he shouldn't have been about to give it up. He had reached wit's end. He had fought the government tooth and nail for as long as he could. But it's very difficult to fight the government when the federal government is coming after you with a federal agency, and the federal agency charges you with these things they just make up. And then those charges go into a federal court, and you're standing in front of a federal judge being prosecuted by a federal prosecutor, and even if you don't have the money and you have to have a court-appointed attorney, the pockets that the money comes from to pay that attorney is federal money. The deck is stacked, folks. It's stacked. You're not going to win. Cliven Bundy put the word out. I need help. I need supporters. I need people from across this country to rally to us and make a stand. Because what the BLM decided to do was take his cattle. They were rounding them up, shooting them, burning them, and burying them in mass graves. They were ripping up all of the water infrastructure that Cliven Bundy, at his cost, had installed throughout the plains areas for the cows and the cattle. That's what they were doing. So initially some protesters and supporters of Bundy showed up, and they tried to stick him in a First Amendment roped off area in the middle of no freaking place. Imagine that. Your First Amendment's only good if it's in the roped off area. The funny thing was that nobody went there. You know, it was a joke, but they were serious about it. People started to realize that something untoward was going on. Dump trucks were out on the plains area. They saw trucks going out there. They saw backhoes going out there. And it was very suspicious. And you maybe have seen one of the videos where a dump truck was coming out, and one of the Bundy brothers, I think it was David, but he was trying to see what was in the truck, because he pretty much knew what was in the truck, dead cattle. They wouldn't let him, and it got a little rough. They took one of the women, they threw her on the ground. I believe she was pregnant. He got beat up. They didn't do anything wrong, but the BLM did. That was long before Jerry got there. Jerry called Cliven Bundy, Jerry being who he is, and he had a conversation with him. And at the end of the conversation, Jerry said, man, this man needs help, and we got to go. So Jerry, very next day, I mean, there wasn't any more thought to it than that, and the very next day, him and several others from New Hampshire went. And they drove all the way through. I think it was a 41 or 42-hour ride to get there. Jerry didn't get there before the big showdown they had in the draw. He got there a day after. A lot of the charges they charged Jerry with actually were pointed at that particular incident. He wasn't even there. They're just throwing stuff up against the wall at all these guys. So Jerry got to the Bundy Ranch, and he realized there were a lot of different people there, a lot of folks. And you had different factions, different organizations, and so forth. Long story short, and Jerry decided that maybe it'd be better to have this under control and to make sure nothing bad happened. And Jerry, being a sergeant in the Marine Corps, he basically volunteered to do it. He did a hell of a job. He got everything organized. He made sure that everybody understood the reason they were there. They weren't there to cause problems. They weren't there to shoot anybody. That wasn't an issue. It was never going to be an issue unless the Bundy family was attacked, which they weren't. And he made it clear to Cliven Bundy that if they came with a warrant for his arrest, then that's what's going to have to happen. And Cliven agreed. Yes, I will go. I am not going to fight a warrant. That didn't happen either. But Jerry came and went from the ranch many times. He went to visit the sheriff, who refused to see him. It wasn't like what people made it out to be, and the mainstream media made it out to be this huge armed standoff. That wasn't what it was at all. And yes, there were a lot of people, snipers, BLM snipers, other agents that were up. They were up in the mountains training their rifles on these guys that were there. They did that. Our guys didn't do that. So a couple of weeks goes by, and Jerry decides, well, it's about time to come home. Everything seems to be peaceable. Didn't seem to be much more that they could do there. So Jerry and the rest of the men came home. As far as he was concerned, and the rest of them were concerned, that was the end of it. There was no violence. Nobody got hurt. There was 0 victims. Well, other than the people that got wrapped up by the BLM. And it was, I don't know, roughly a year after he got back, maybe a little less, he got a call from the FBI. They wanted to meet with him. Yeah, Jerry being Jerry, he's a very trustworthy guy. If you know Jerry, he had no reason to worry about this. I did. You know, I felt that this wasn't a good thing. But he went. He had his meeting. He still felt they're just doing their job. Months later, they called him a second time. Jerry went for that meeting too. Again, thinking they're just doing this. It's their job. And then a call came, and this is, I'm going to get to Oregon before we get to the last call. The incident in Oregon, which occurred because the Hammond family, Hammond, Hammond family, they owned a ranch. Young family with the grandfather lived there, and they owned a ranch as well, and they owned it since the mid-60s. And again, BLM was coercing them and trying to run them off that ranch. They wouldn't leave. And they had, again, I'm shortening the story, but they had asked permission, got a permit to do a backfire to stop a fire coming their way. It did work, saved property. And then they had a control burn that they also had requested a permit for, which they got. That one went a little further than they originally wanted it to go. So you know what they did? They, being the BLM, charged them with arson. They charged them with arson, and then they charged them as domestic terrorists for lighting 2 fires that they had permission to light, one a backfire and one a controlled burn. The grandfather and the son, that's who they charged. They go to court, they're found guilty. They got sentenced to prison. One served a year, the younger one, and the father, the older man, served 4 or 5 months. And then they let him out. They thought they had served their time. Then Obama appointed another judge. Had that judge, the second judge, relook at the sentencing. The second judge, knowing full well had orders to do what I'm about to tell you, said, whoops, the minimum sentence for domestic terrorism is 5 years in prison. Come on back. You all got to serve 5 years, both of you. They're there now, serving their time. When the Bundy family heard about this travesty, they decided this is still their fight. They decided that this is just so unjust that we have to go and stand with this family. The Hammond family really didn't want them to do that. But the Bundys, that's how they are. They just said, no, we can't let this stand. And so they went to Oregon to protest and support the Hammond family. They took over the Mare Refuge. You may have heard about this. And people said it was an armed, no. They went there. They had the keys. They went in. They used it, came back and forth multiple times, all the time. They had a PowerPoint presentation they gave to people explaining the Constitution. and what people really don't understand, and I don't think many of you understand, and that is this. In the Constitution, it's specific. The federal government cannot own any more than 2% of the land mass of this country. And that includes land to be used for forts, ports, and of course the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. Forts and ports being military bases and deep water ports for the Navy. That's it. All you've got to do is look at a map, particularly out west. The federal government owns some of the land in New Hampshire, but if you look at that map, you'll see how much land the federal government owns. Thank God for Donald Trump. Donald Trump has already made the decision that that land is going to go back to the states that it belongs to. But Jerry went out there. He didn't necessarily agree that they should have went into the refuge, but he wanted to talk to them because he knew them. And he figured, hey, look, maybe I can talk them out and just end this thing peacefully, and that'll be the end of it. He went all the way out there on his dime. They wouldn't let him see him. But Jerry came back. He told the FBI he was going. He talked to the FBI out there. Jerry was saddened by the fact that he couldn't really help much because they wouldn't let him, and he came home. After Jerry came home, you may have heard about what happened with Lavoy Finicum. Lavoy Finicum, salt of the earth, 11 children. He's one of the ranchers out in Nevada. He came to help the Hammond family. And they were on their way to another county to do a PowerPoint town hall presentation in a county that had a friendly sheriff who believed in these guys. And they were ambushed by the FBI and Oregon State Police. Lavoy Finicum got out of the car, ran away from the car, very deep snow, and they just riddled him. They shot him 6 or 7 times. And then they trained their guns on the vehicle, shot at the vehicle trying to kill the people in it. Be right back.
Honey, can you hear me? Here, put him to the microphone.
This is Jerry DeLemus, folks. We'll see if we can get this to work. Jerry, I'm going to try this. You got it on speaker?
Yeah, it's on speaker. Put it right up to the microphone.
All right. Go ahead, Jerry. Give it a try.
Hey, Jack.
Yes!
First off, God bless all of you.
Well, stop that. Okay.
And now it's what, about 14 months. I think actually Thursday was my 60th week of being in captivity, and we've got to reclaim our country, obviously, and the justice system is broken, and when people can't stand together peacefully without fear of retribution from the government, we've got a problem. I mean, my record stands on its own, I think, for what I did while I was out there and what I did when I came back and I went out to the Hammonds, and obviously it's some political vendetta is why I'm in here. But we can't be quiet because of that. We can't be intimidated by that. That's the tactics that dictators and tyrants use to quiet their adversaries. And we've got to, if anything, find our voices and be even less afraid to be able to speak our minds, and obviously peacefully, and do what's right. They say freedom isn't free, and I'm telling you, I've learned that. But also our justice system is terribly broken. If I can be intimidated, have my friends threatened with imprisonment, witnesses threatened with imprisonment for even testifying at the trials, I mean, as we really need to take a look at what our system is doing when convictions are more important than the truth and justice, there's a problem. And with the full weight of the United States government bearing down on us is who's next? And we've got to think, what if this is our children or our grandchildren who this goes through, or even ourselves? Is it's got to stop, and there's got to be some type of accountability for our government. I mean, Daniel P. Love, the special agent in charge that was out there at Bunkerville, was held found guilty in an inspector general report of doing all kinds of criminal behavior, even threatening his employees, and get tampering with their testimonies. And he's the guy that the federal government under Obama had in charge of that whole operation. And to be honest with you, I believe that if he hadn't been that guy, if there had been a decent man, someone with some integrity in charge, this probably wouldn't even have happened. I probably wouldn't be sitting here on a concrete floor in a prison 3,000 miles from home. But it's your voices that make the difference. It's your hearts, your prayers that make the difference. And I've done what I can do, and obviously limited what I can do. And as you hear, I'm in an inmate facility. I do want to remind you of this: is you're not innocent until proven guilty in our system. That's a lie. Anybody who tells you that, they're lying to you. They know nothing about the system, whether they're lying intentionally or just out of ignorance. As there is no innocent until proven guilty. But we still need to stand. We can't cower. We can't be afraid. We've got to be courageous and stand. And it's our freedom, our country, and that's on the line. And hopefully President Trump will hear the call. And I know he came out and he was talking to the NRA about Second Amendment rights, that they're not going to be infringed. Well, they're being infringed right now in the courts in Nevada over what happened out here at Bunkerville 3 years ago. Our right to free speech is being infringed, and our freedoms are being taken away. It's obvious with what happened with the national monument that all the surrounding area of the Bundy Ranch is now encircled with the national monument, which is exactly what Harry Reid Obama wanted, and that's why Obama did that on the way out the door. And we just need to keep the light on it. The dark hates the light and flees from it, so we need to keep the light on, and not like Motel 6, but as God would have us do it, and just be faithful. And I love you guys, and thank you for all the support of Sue and I, and you've been a true blessing, and we just absolutely love you guys. I wrote something that Sue will read, so I don't want to take too much time here, but I think of you all the time, and I pray for all of you all the time. And I've got a busy ministry in here in the church, in the church, in the jail. And our prison, there's 96 of us in here, and it's quite a condition to live in. It's a bunk bed, but it's all in all, it's been a blessing. Strange to say. So I'm going to go, and I love all of you, and God bless you, and remember.
I mean, God works in mysterious ways. I don't know. I'm up here and he calls when I'm up here. That's amazing. Nice going, Jerry. But I want to really quickly continue on this story because LaVoy Finicum was murdered. And fast forward, the first 7 people in Oregon that had their trial several months ago were found not guilty of all charges. The man that they shot and killed would have been found not guilty of all charges. He's dead. This is insanity what's going on. So then, fast forward some additional time, Jerry's back here. He gets a call from the FBI. Jerry, we want to meet you at the Rochester Dunkin' Donuts. This doesn't mean you can't go to Dunkin' Donuts anymore, folks, but I'm just telling you, that's where they wanted to meet him. And they wanted him to come alone. Jerry called me up. What do you think? I said, I think they're going to arrest you. And I think you do not go there without an attorney. Well, he went. He didn't go with an attorney, but he didn't go alone. That's all I'll tell you. But they didn't show up for the 9 o'clock meeting because there were too many people there. Then they rescheduled it for 1 o'clock. They didn't show up for the 1 o'clock meeting either. Too many people there. They were concerned for their well-being. That was the excuse they gave. Several days after that, though, they showed up. They showed up at Sue and Jerry's door. They forced their way in. They're all tacked out, carrying their M4s, with all their gear on. It's like it was a SWAT hit. They had vehicles all up and down their condo complex. They had people outside of every condo. They had agents out on the street and on the main road. It was nothing but a dog and pony show because Jerry would have gone peaceably. It never would have been a problem. There was no need of it. He went through hell initially. We found out where they were going to arraign him that day. And in 2 hours, we filled the damn courtroom. In 2 hours, we had more people in that courtroom than it could hold. That day, there were two issues that they were going to contend with. One was Jerry a flight risk? And two, was he a threat to the community? That day, they didn't find Jerry to be a flight risk, but they scheduled another hearing on the following Monday to address the detention part of this. Well, we had a little more time to get people there. Yeah, we had more people that day than we got here today. We filled 2 courtrooms, and we had people all outside on the stairs because we knew about this injustice. You had 5 character witnesses, all glowing. The magistrate says, well, you know what, I'm not going to make a decision right now. And as soon as she said that, I knew what she was going to do. She knew if she decided to keep Jerry in custody and not let him go home, awaiting trial, that she would have had a revolt. You see, the circles that I travel in, they don't take very kindly to this kind of stuff. That's you all. So they took Jerry. We kept him here for an extra week or so, got a different attorney, but in the end, they moved him. Took a long time for him to get there, but they moved him to Nevada. He's in Pahrump, Nevada now, which is where you just heard him speaking from. Jerry, while he was there, started a Bible ministry. This guy is amazing. I mean, he starts a Bible ministry. He's even got the guards coming into the Bible ministry. They need it, let me tell you. And he starts the Bible ministry, and it's grown and grown and grown. And a few months ago, he called me up. He says, Jack, today I had the opportunity to try to save a man's life. He said they weren't treating him very well medically. He had some real issues. He collapsed on the floor up at the end of the hall from where I am, and he would stop breathing. He said, I went up there and started to perform CPR, worked hard at it. He said, didn't work. The man died. And Jerry said, funny thing though. He said, you know me. I don't see color. We all bleed red. He said, this man happened to be a black man. And there was a lot of black folks that are in his unit there. After this happened, they all came up to him, and they all thanked him for trying. And Jerry was he was certainly impressed by that, but he was taken aback by that because he thought, hell, I'd do that. I'd do that for anybody. And for whatever reason, they thought this was a unique thing to them. And Jerry appreciated the thanks, don't get me wrong, but that's the guy he is. He's a hero in my view, and he deserves to get out of there. Real quickly, you got to understand what's going on with Jerry now. Jerry filed a plea bargain, many months ago. It puzzled me, I'm going to be honest with you. I was not in favor of this, but after he explained it to me, I understood completely, and I'm no longer upset about it. I mean, Jerry knew and found out that the FBI was threatening to arrest other members of the group that he was with, and even family members and so forth. And Jerry felt, well, you know what, if I take that card off, because they wanted them to turn info over to the FBI so that they could have a greater case against Jerry. Those people, and I know who they are, would never do it anyway. But what happened was that Jerry pled guilty and agreed to serve 6 years in prison, and he's done nothing wrong. And he did it because he said, well, I don't care. I'm not going to let anybody else suffer because of what I had done. So what happened is the first 7 in Oregon were found not guilty of all charges, and Jerry instantly said, God, I'm going to withdraw my plea. He said, I want to stand before a jury of my peers. That's the way this is going to go. And so Jerry very quickly issued a withdrawal of that plea. The way it works is you have to go before the judge to get it approved. They have intentionally not let him go before the judge for months. He still hasn't been able to go before the judge to get this approved, so therefore he doesn't even have a trial date. But the thing that you got to understand is that the first 6 men just that were there, that got arrested, had their trial. And over the last 2 months, the prosecution got to put on a 7-week trial, 7 weeks, and the defense had 2 days. Let me tell you why they only had 2 days. They have a biased judge who was appointed by Barack Obama who wants to see each and every one of these men incarcerated because it's all political. But let me tell you what happened. There were 10 witnesses approved and going to testify for the defense. 10. One of them was Assemblywoman Michelle Fiore. You may not know her, but I have gotten to know her. She's a great woman. And she was one of those witnesses. The judge went before the 10 of them and told them in private that if any of you testify in defense of these defendants, you're going to be considered unindicted co-conspirators. What that means is that anything they say can and would be used against them if they decided to arrest them when they were testifying. They called attorneys in, and the attorneys advised these witnesses that they shouldn't testify because of fear that they would be arrested. 9 of the 10 did not testify. Only one man had the courage to do it, which forced the defendants, who shouldn't have to be forced to testify on their own behalf. They didn't even let the pocket Constitution in her courtroom. Not allowed. If you came in the courtroom with the pocket Constitution, you were going to be held in contempt of her court. Her court. It's the people's court. It's not her court. This is what's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what Jerry's confronted with. This is what happened. We now know, and I didn't know it until 2 days ago, that the jury deliberated, we know that, for about a week. Everyone was surprised because it was fixed. There was no way the defendants were going to get through this and be found not guilty. They asked one question, and the question was this. The jurors asked the judge, if we find the defendants not guilty of conspiracy, because there really isn't any, what does that mean with respect to all the other charges? The judge said, if you find them not guilty of conspiracy, none of the other charges are valid. On their first ballot, on their first run-through, they found all 6 not guilty of conspiracy. The judge was outraged. She said, I do not accept your verdict. You have to go back and deliberate more. I want a different verdict. This is true. Easily verifiable. They did actually. They should have held firm, but they didn't. Came back with a different verdict. 4 of the 6 men, hung jury on every charge. Not guilty on, didn't find them not guilty, but they couldn't find them guilty, so it was a hung jury on every charge. One of the men had 2 charges he found them guilty on, and one guy who was a defendant, one of the 6, a defendant, was called earlier during the trial by the prosecution to testify against the defendants. At that point, they had to acknowledge that that defendant was in fact an FBI informant the whole time. He wound up being charged guilty 8 of the 10 charges. 8 of the 10, that guy's guilty. I don't know what they're going to do about that, but that's going to be very interesting. But this is what these guys are up against. This is what's happening. What we need you to do, and I seriously mean this. I have a couple other people I'm going to be meeting with next week that have direct access to key people in the White House and one in the Attorney General's, and the Attorney General himself. We have to demand that these men be released and come home. They're not guilty of anything. They should just be released. Those, exactly. The prosecution, even with this finding, the prosecution has the option to not schedule another trial, not retry these men. The prosecution can just say you're free to go. I don't think they're going to do that. And if they don't do that, they've got to wait 8 more months before they get another trial. And they're doing it on purpose. None of these men have been let to go home. Families are being destroyed. Financially, they're getting ruined. People are being left alone. They can't see their children, and they have done nothing wrong except had the courage to stand. I always say about Jerry DeLemus lost his liberty for the simple reason that he defended another man's liberty. It's the same with the rest of them. So today I call for all of you to help us out. Write letters to the Attorney General. You've got the address. Make a lot of noise. Don't leave this man in jail another day without making a lot of noise. Let everybody know we do not accept this tyranny. I want to see our President Donald Trump, and I think that once all of the rest of the stuff he's got to deal with gets cleared, that I do think he'll address this. And I certainly like our Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. I have a very high regard for him. So I think the day will come where we'll be able to get this all straightened out. But in the meantime, we the people have to make some noise. So I ask you all of you, to not let him sit there anymore, to fight. If you have contacts, call them up. If you know attorneys, good ones, and they're ready to would help Jerry out pro bono, please give them a phone call. Let's get him all the help that he needs so we can get him home. Thank you very much. I'm going to come back a little later and talk a little bit about Donald Trump, but Jerry stole some of my thunder, so I'm going to cut it a bit short. Our next speaker, head of the Granite Rock, guy that you have come and know and love here. He's been running the board for me all day, keeping the mic working. Skip Murphy, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen, indeed. The bigger the government, oh, come on. You're lazy. Louder. The bigger the government, that's better. Does everybody agree with that here? Yeah. Does anybody disagree with that here? Sir with the green shirt from Granite State Progress. You guys don't agree with that. You really don't, do you? Well, let me give you, one of these cameras is yours. Let me give a message to Zandra Rice Hawkins, the executive director of Granite State Progress. She used to use these words against me when we used to meet up at events. So I want to say, Zandra, from your favorite homophobic, misogynist, xenophobic, racist, sexist, best buddy, good afternoon. We are here about liberty. Socialism is not. Big government, a statist government, is not. Pretty much this deep into the speaker list, everything I was going to say is gone. But I will talk about a couple of things. Karen earlier said, bang on the door. People here have said, go ahead and write letters to Attorney General. I would say, just for the heck of it, write to Jean Shaheen, Carol Shea Porter, Maggie the Red Hassan, and Annie Custer. They won't listen, but you can call and you can smirk. No, indeed, you can start that. And if anything else, it's just political theater. And that's why Granite State Progress is here, by the way, for political theater. They're looking for the soundbite that they can use on their site or in emails or what have you. So hopefully I've given you one. Pastor Garrett said, how did we get into this mess? It's a very easy answer. We've gone away from the Constitution, and we have a fifth column called socialism here in New Hampshire and across the country. Progressivism, just another politically correct term for incremental socialism. Everything that almost all of us here stand for, they stand against. That is how we get into this mess that we're in. This is how Jerry DeLemus is in the mess that he is in, because of government overreach. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. Think about that, folks. We were founded on the idea of individual liberty, of a sovereign citizen, that we did not have to ask the government for permission to do things. That for once, there was no right of king. The kings that talked to God, that God talked to the kings, and then the aristocracy talked to us, the commoners. Instead, like the Reformation that Martin Luther did, our founders did the same thing politically. That we were the sovereigns, that government reported to us. Unfortunately now, we see the opposite. That we must now get on our knees and beg for permission to do a lot of things nowadays. I dare you to come up with a single area of your life where government has not intruded. I've done this mental exercise before, and I can't think of anything or anyone that can say, I can think of one. Hi, take my picture. Granite State Progress is among those that loves bigger government. Sandra Rice Hawkins has made it quite clear over the years with her stances and with her political stunts. These are the people that we marched against. These are the people who we stand up to say, no more. Folks, I have been privileged to use Granite Rock as a voice for liberty in this state. I am thankful that many of you read Granite Rock. I wish I could do more, but I do what I think I can do best. But I reiterate what was said earlier by Karen. We are in a special state. We are in a small state. And I have learned by personal experience, one person can make a difference. One person can sway opinions that they otherwise wouldn't do. It is often said there's no more Tea Party, even though I have seen the flags. Well, the Tea Partiers did their rallies, and we tried to do a lot of things to say no more. And then we got to work politically. We went out and did things. We ran for offices. We helped others, like-minded people, get into office. That's right. And I'm going to tell you now that all of you need to be doing the same thing. It's nice to come to a rally like this. I don't get out very much lately. But run. Local level if you can. Further up if you can and will. But always keep in mind, one person makes a difference. Because the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. It is our duty to turn around and say, the bigger the citizen, the smaller the government. I like the idea of putting government into a burlap bag, tying a rope around it, and throwing it into a full bathtub. Heresy, according to Granite State Progress, but that's really what our founders wanted. That we, the civil society, should have the majority of decision-making here in this country. That it was supposed to be a big buffer between the people and government. Granite State Progress and others of that same ilk believe completely opposite. We could say that. We could say that. Because if you look at their, well, a few months ago during the campaigns, a lot of top-level Democrats were asked, what is the difference between Democrats and socialists? And not one could or would answer that question because they knew that there is no difference. When you look at the manifestos from years past from the Communist Party USA, and you look at the Democrat Party platform today, I don't see much of a difference. This is what we're up against, folks. And with that, I will say that Jerry DeLemus is one who truly believes that the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. He stood up to be that one. Something that I would have to say that I couldn't do. But he stood up in the best way that he could to make a stand to say, no more big government. And you've heard story after story so far from the previous speakers. of what has happened from that bigger government. This is tyranny. Make sure you get that down, please. Folks, I thank you for your time, your willingness to come out on a Saturday afternoon to spend your valuable time here in support of Jerry DeLemus. And always keep saying, the bigger the government, thank you.
Hang in there, folks. We're almost done.
Yeah, I want to get a picture of everybody who's staying.
Yeah. Well, we'll try. Okay. Well, let's. I want to let Dan, the Honorable Dan Itza, come up. Listen, folks. Most of you know this next speaker. He's been in the House for this is the 17th year. This guy's been fighting on our behalf. I'd like to consider Dan a friend, and he certainly is a patriot. The Honorable Dan Itza.
Thanks, Omar. Thank you all. It is often said, well, first of all, I want to preface this. When all this was happening, the person who was sitting next to me in the House of Representatives was Sue DeLemus. She actually sat one seat away, further away, but that gentleman didn't attend very often. So she was right beside me when we were wondering whether Jerry was going to be incarcerated. Jack was calling me saying, what do you think he should do? And then I saw Sue's face the day after he had been taken. It is often said that we are a nation of laws. But what is the highest law of the land?
Constitution.
How do you know that? Sue said it. It says so. Article 6, Section 2. This Constitution, the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties which made or shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. Well, let's look at Article 1. Who makes the laws? No, Congress makes the laws, and Congress has enumerated powers. Article 1, Section 8, number 17. The power to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may be by cession of particular states and acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. Well, let's think about where Jerry was when the offense was committed. Is there any authorization to take land for the preservation of animals?
No.
To erect national monuments?
No.
To lease land for mining for income?
No.
To preserve open land?
No.
We are indeed a law of nations and not of men. The Constitution, which authorizes those laws, only authorizes laws pursuant to that Constitution. A law which exercises an unenumerated power is not law. Now, there's a philosopher from the mid-18th century, Bastiat. He tells us that justice does not exist in the positive, but it is the punishment of injustice, what one man does to another, that results in justice. Lawful laws have one purpose: to punish injustice. Incarceration for violating an unlawful law is itself injustice. The Constitution for the United States makes provision to prevent injustice. Okay, we have a law and it's inappropriately implied or it's a bad law in the first place. The first place for justice to intervene is with the jury. And in addition to the jury trial, the president has the power to pardon. Article 2, Section 2, Paragraph 2,
and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States. We are a nation of laws, pursuant to the Constitution. But in our respect for law, we must never forget justice. We must never forsake it. As you heard earlier, Jerry is incarcerated for assaulting an officer of the law. The offense occurred when he was not there. And that officer was in fact enforcing a law with no basis in the Constitution for the United States of America, an unlawful law. When presidents leave office, they often pardon many individuals who have committed crimes against person and property. Actually, unrighteous acts. For Jerry DeLemus, justice demands a pardon. Now, what I'm asking each of you to do, my good friend Representative Gary Hopper is over underneath a tent over there, and he's got a, somebody's going to catch these. No, Sue, not you. A bunch of pre-prepared letters with envelopes stamped. All you have to do is open it, sign it, and send it. It's addressed to Attorney General Jeff Sessions. It's asking him to take a look at the case. And hopefully that will result in his recommending to the President of the United States that he execute a pardon. I want to know right now, and this is where the rubber meets the road, how many of you will take one of these envelopes and send them? Thank you.
I'm going to photocopy it and give it to my friends so we can multiply it.
And to my friends who are in the legislature and are here today, I urge you all to write it on legislative overhead with a legislative envelope. They're more likely to open it. Thank you very much. God bless you, and God bless the state of New Hampshire.
All right. Don't anyone leave. We're going to take a group photo, get it to Jerry, all right? Please stay. Only a few more minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very, very pleased to introduce to you the wife of Jerry DeLemus, Sue DeLemus, who is a real hero. She has hung tough all this time. I remember talking to Jerry a few weeks ago, and Jerry said to me, "Yeah, I'm married to the best Marine wife that there is." Well, that she is and more. She's been taking care of her very ill mother by herself all this time. Well, she's had help. Some good people have helped her out.
Many good people.
Very pleased to introduce to you the wife of Jerry DeLemus, Sue DeLemus.
Thank you all so much for coming. You have no idea. I just wish everyone who had been here earlier was still here so we could get a great picture and send it off to Jerry and show him, you know, how much you guys all think of him. And I'm really grateful to everyone who's been helping us from the very beginning, from the very first day when Jerry was taken from our home. I just can't thank you enough. I mean, the outpouring, the support, the prayers, the money, the hands and feet of Christ, people coming to help me get my apartment ready to rent it, which I have now. You know what? If I looked at myself a year ago, and a friend of mine had lunch just yesterday, and we were looking at it, and she said, you know, think of where you were last year or this month. And I'm like, wow, it was really bad. I mean, it was really bad. I had no idea how I was going to even survive or what was going to happen or anything. And I was still in the legislature at that time. And now I look at myself a year later and look at where we are. And yeah, Jerry's still in jail. And man, it's really bad. And I hate that. I hate it more than anything. But you know something? I'm on my feet with the help of my friends. We've been able to straighten everything out. I've got my place rented. I've got a job. My mom, I'm taking care of Mom, but you know I've gotten better at that too. So we're okay. We're going to be okay. It's not the end of the world, and I know my husband's coming back. One of these days he's coming back, and boy, when he does, it's going to be great. We're going to have our big party, and and then we're going to get on with it. Do you know what I mean? We're going to get on with it. We're going to get on with something. Prison advocacy, more legislation, more work, harder work, as much as we can, every inch of the way. Fight, fight, fight. And you know how Facebook, if any of you guys have been on Facebook for a little while, they send you these reminders of what you did a couple years ago, a year ago, whatever. And I got this little reminder from April 21st, 2014, and it was posted 3 years ago when Jerry was still in Bunkerville in April of 2014, and his story, his point, and his purpose have never changed. And this is what I wrote, and then I'll read to you what he wrote. Monday, April 21st, 2014, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I just got an email from Jerry, my wonderful husband. He wanted me to share this with you all. It's vitally important that everyone knows that diplomacy is what we're after here. Above all, Harry Reid and his ilk are trying to label us as domestic terrorists. We need to show them who we really are. Level-headed, true blue Americans who are looking for a peaceful resolution. We stand within the parameters of the Constitution of the United States. We need to get in front of the propaganda machine and make sure everyone knows this. Please share this. That was what I wrote. But Jerry had written this. I want all to know that we will not obstruct in any way law enforcement officers from serving any lawful warrant to anyone on the Bundy property. We are not lawless, nor will we hinder any legal actions by law enforcement. I know Mr. Cliven Bundy has told law enforcement he would not resist any lawful warrant if served. He was there for peace. That's what Jerry was there for. Safety and peace of citizens and fellow citizens. Everyone here. He would go to the wall for the gentleman in the green shirt. He would go to the wall for anybody that needs help. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter how old you are or how young or anything. That's the kind of man he is, and that's why I love him so much, and I have a tendency to do the same. And I know probably all of you out there are about the same as well. And I love you all. All right, so I don't want to make this boring, but this is a letter from Jerry, so I'm just going to read it. Today, as my words are read to you, it is my 422nd day of captivity. This is even hard for me to believe, as I've spent most of my life serving our country in one form or another. President Ronald Reagan warned America, we are always just one generation away from losing our freedoms. Man, I think that generation's already sinking. We've lost a lot of our freedoms when my husband is sitting in jail for nothing. That's right. The danger is when apathy takes root in society, no one will be able to accuse all of you of being apathetic. Susan and I are so very grateful to all of you for your prayers, your help, your time, and all your support, and boy, is that true. Truly, as Sue likes to say, you are the hands and feet of Jesus, our Messiah, and the salt of the earth. The Apostle Paul tells us in Hebrews chapter 13, verses 2 and 3, let brotherly love continue, be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. Remember them that are in bonds, as bound with them, and them which suffer adversity, as being also in the body. Amen. These words surely were not wasted on all of you, because here you are. I must share an experience I had while being transported from New Hampshire to Brooklyn, New York. By the way, he's been in like 6 prisons, this whole, all across the country. They transported him to so many prisons, it's not even funny. And the Brooklyn one was real bad. I was going from New Hampshire to Brooklyn, New York. I was on the U.S. Marshals bus shackled hand and foot to a large chain around my waist. I had not been told where I was being taken. After we entered New York, I was looking at my chains, and then I looked up, and there was the Statue of Liberty. Words fall dreadfully short of describing my emotion at that point. The symbol of America's liberty, the irony, was not lost on me. I've been at 6 different jails or prisons since my arrest on March 3rd, 2016. On one of my shackled trips, the Apostle Paul's words came to me, an ambassador in chains. This has led me to hold evening prayer call with men as well as a 2 p.m. Bible study each day, as well as witnessing to the men, counseling, and even shaking each man's hand saying, God bless you. He does that at bedtime. Our Bible studies are not much on milk, but heavy on meat, and you can all imagine what that's like. We must serve the scriptures and get on to our harder teachings of God's word. I must admit my day's highlight is when I get to talk to my beautiful wife, Susan. Susan is my Proverbs 31 wife, my gift from Jehovah. She sends Bibles, prayers that prevail, and other study books to me and for the men. Our unit is scattered with Bibles that Sue has sent to them. And it's true, we've sent lots of Bibles. So some of you who have been helping me, that's where some of your gifts have gone, is to provide Bibles for those men in prison who've never had a Bible before. I've heard many men complain that their imprisonment is a waste of time. Not so for me. As I recall our Messiah's words, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Not to mention, I have a captive audience. We are called to be a light, and we have no excuse not to heed God's directions. My reason for going to Bunkerville in April of 2014 are simple. I did not want to see children and grandchildren killed by an overzealous Bureau of Land Management. When I heard BLM snipers were aiming at children and grandchildren, I was convicted to drive to Nevada. My intention was to keep the peace, and while I was there, no one was injured. Whether I helped or not, only God knows. Our Savior tells us if our brother needs help, not to just pray for him, but to provide. History should have taught us that following God's direction can cost us while we're on earth. Not following him has eternal consequences I am not willing to pay. So here I sit imprisoned. We must continue to stand for what we know is right, even when there is personal cost, especially when there is personal cost. If we as Americans are unwilling to stand to preserve our freedoms, who do we expect will? As Nevada Assemblywoman Michelle Fiore said, our government has put laws in place to protect itself from the people. And isn't that true? Our court proceedings in Nevada should be proof of the accuracy of her statement. Have we really thought of what General John Stark meant when he said, live free or die, death is not the worst of evils? Our Declaration of Independence states mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the former to which they are accustomed. By not heeding our founders' warnings, we will be shown how slaves are made. I will promise you our government isn't afraid of an armed citizenry as much as it is of an educated, moral, and outspoken people. And that's the truth. They hate the truth. They hate it. They despise the truth. They don't want the Constitution in the courtroom. They disallow jury nullification. Anyone who can hear my voice, learn what jury nullification is. Out in the western states, they don't allow you to even talk about it. Here in New Hampshire, we're blessed because we actually have laws on the books about jury nullification. I will tell you right now, it is imperative. It's imperative that everybody learn it, spread it, know it. We are going to be putting up billboards out in Las Vegas, Nevada, before the next trial that's going to talk about jury nullification because the courts won't let you. The judges are silencing people. Go online to John Lamb, Facebook, John Lamb, just Lamb, John Lamb, and he has been really instrumental in exposing what's been going on in the courts. Get in touch with him if you want to really help out with that campaign, because we need to get those up and people need to be educated. Words are their enemy along with the truth. As they full well know, I was no physical threat to them. Rather, I was shining a light on their behavior. The dark hates the light. We must be a moral people and be faithful to Yehovah God. If we do not do this, we are lost as a nation. By not being moral, we have allowed the construction of an immoral government, a justice system that doesn't seek justice, but instead seeks convictions like scalps. This is how the federal courts have attained a 97% conviction rate. Let that sink in. 97% conviction rate in the federal courts. That's unbelievable. That is unbelievable because it's manipulated to be that way. We are slaves. As much as they use conspiracy to charge most of the accused, they should be wearing the tinfoil hats they so often accuse Americans of wearing. Our nation cannot remain in rebellion against God, or we will fall. I love you all, and may Jehovah God bless each one of you. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. Semper Fi, Jerry. I think I've said just about everything I meant to say, and Jerry, we speak the same language, my husband and I. We're like two peas in a pod. And I agree with everything that he says pretty much all the time, which is probably unheard of for a lot of couples. But we agree pretty much all the time on everything. And what he has said, I just say, ditto. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, whoops, what's going on? Hello, here we go. I'm it. I'm the last one. All right, so listen, folks. One thing, I'm going to leave you just with a minute or two. This rally also is in support of our president, Donald Trump. And this man has done more in 100 days than the prior administration has done in 8 years. And I got to tell you, okay, I was a Ted Cruz guy. Most of you know that. But boy, as soon as this happened, I was the Trump guy, and I have been ever since. And he's proven to me every day. Every day I used to wake up petrified because I didn't know what god-awful thing